live. I bet that's Willie in the room. Who knows? It's
She'll be the first one in the room.
it's
So
great
I
to
I
hear. Of
I can count on her.
course,
But
if
but but
I
no,
go
Deborah
live.
Vietor here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Cheryl, Deborah. Just so I know, when you go live, always count on your husband calling you at 7 o'clock, just so you know. You know how that all goes. But I'm excited to see you. I'm excited people are in the room. So let's get started. It's good to see you. And I know today it's blustery out, it's windy, and it seems like I feel like we're in the Wizard of Oz, a little Dorothy blown around here, and with everything going on. Um, what has been on your mind today?
Well, you said it earlier when we were just chatting that good is everywhere in terms of people turning out for Renee Good, and it's been all week long. And the Eastern Shore where I am, we have a population of less than 12,000 people, and one of the folks from the Eastern Shore was actually in Norfolk yesterday. And he was one of the folks picked to do an interview about why it was so important for him to be out there. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how big your town is. I saw people on Facebook today, our little Democratic committee, and three of them were standing out with their signs. And so people, no matter how big or small, are affected, and they are demonstrating and showing and protesting what they feel about what happened
Yeah.
last week.
I would say I was talking about when we say her name. I mean, that comes up. That is from the Breonna Taylors, the people that we know that have been murdered, right? It's very powerful. But her name meets this moment. It's interesting, Renee Nicole Good, when we think about um, everything that good happened today. And it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting how that aligned in a way. And I'll tell you what I was feeling today, beside crazy, because I have a new puppy and I don't know how to manage my day yet, just trying to figure it out. But I was able to go to two events. I went to two, uh, Ice Out for Good events, one in Vienna, Virginia,
Hmm.
downtown. I saw the best thing I could say about activism is when you show up and you see your friends, and there is some real joy in this serious moment. You approach this protest, you come out of your car, the street is lined with people. There is signs, there is flags, there is energy. It was so amazing. And then the joy in seeing each other, like I ran into Michelle Moore and we hugged, and Peggy Pridemore and we hugged, and Missy Dixon. And there was something just uh, e- just amazing to be in that space with these amazing organizers. And I can say it was the honking and the noise for good. That really gave it really shows how important it is to show up, because it makes you feel, it takes the weight off. You feel like you feel better. Does that make, when you can get out and do it? I don't know if everybody in the room joined something today, but it sure felt good to be.
Yeah, what I would say is that we're learning more and more about her and the kind of person that she was. And though that makes it harder, you're not surprised that she would be out there, demonstrating the way that she was, to say how harmful, ICE was. But what I also didn't know is that she was a graduate of Old Dominion University, so they did a really big event to talk about her and talk about what kind of student she was. And it doesn't appear that she was very different than the way that she is now in terms of the way that she cares about people. So I think this is a harrowing moment for lots of people. And one of the reasons that it is two things I think about. I think about Heather Heyer, who was in Charlottesville, and I think about the reaction to that, and I think about Renee here and the reaction that we think about. And what I want to bring to this conversation is that whatever it takes to get people's attention, because we're finding that more and more and more people are paying attention. And I
Right,
think they're paying attention because they realize that it's not going to be just people who are othered, in a
right,
sense, but you can look at people who are the people that you know, who are your neighbors and your friends and your family, because we tend to socialize with people who look like us and who are our family. And now that you can see the reflection that it looks like someone like you when you look in the mirror, people are paying a lot closer attention, which we've been saying all along that no one is safe. And I
Right.
think that people are realizing that no one is safe in this moment. And historical context tells us that no one is safe.
Yeah, it does, and, we definitely when we talked about this on the show on Friday, how we opened the show with the mayor and just basically, you know, what I loved was the powerful words that felt like someone was going to protect you when the mayor said, "I have a message for ICE, get the fuck out." And I think that today when I see people, I think that kind of energy also gets people out on the streets. It is a serious moment. I'll say that at the event, I was also went to a visibility bridge event over at Audrey Moore in Annandale. There were so many people. It was, I would say, hundreds of people, and I was thinking, hopefully, this bridge is going to hold up. And going over 95, and again, to witness this, you could imagine this whole pedestrian bridge is lined with people, right? And in the middle, it was like a show. I mean, not a show, but people were playing guitars, and the wind is blowing. By the way, it's really cold, and they're have their signs, and there is people dressed up, and there's all this energy. And the truckers were out of control tonight. They were really beeping a lot, which makes me interested that truckers were really responding in a huge way. I think that people are waking up, but I was so glad I was able to attend those two events, and so just to make sure that we talked about that, and I want everybody on here to say that we're all professional agitators. That will be my next T-shirt. I know you have "How We Win" on your T-shirt. Mine's going to be "Professional Agitator," and that's what I said to everybody tonight. And I got a lot of good um, people got some laughs out of it. It's not like funny, but it's sort of like we have to make fun of we have to call out this damn labels. When you call a mom who cares about her neighbor a professional agitator, when you call her a domestic terrorist, we have to respond. And let's talk about that. Why is it so important to tell the truth in this when we talk about what was on your mind today? But when we have the receipts, what that looks like, when we look back on why it's so important to know history and that why truth telling is so important.
Yeah, I wanna get to that, and I wanna
Yeah.
talk about that because I know that we'll talk at length about explicit and his article
Say who
on the
explicit
crime
is.
scene.
Maybe I can find
Yeah, so
left.
but before we get there, I
Mhm.
just want to make note that there was a really a good clip today of Jasmine Crockett,
Oh,
who you know is one of my favorite people, and
okay.
she was really impassioned, and she was talking to her colleagues on the right, and she was talking about Renee Good and how horrible and how sad it was, and she was actually she had to stop, and this is Jasmine Crockett, we all know how she is.
Yes.
She had to stop, because she got all welled up and emotional, and then she repeated what, Mayor Fry said, and on the Republican side, they started to chastise her
Oh, really?
for using an F-bomb. So she's in the middle of describing this, what happened and what the mayor said, and then they went into this whole other tangent because she used the F-bomb. That is what made them, have, some type of
Mhm.
sense about what was going on. I say this to say that as people see how hard they are, this is what overstepping looks like.
Mhm.
When you look at people who are representing you in Congress,
Right,
whether you are if a Republican independent wouldn't happen on the Democratic side because that's what she was saying when Charlie Kirk was murdered, how the Democrats
right,
responded to that. And
right,
she was talking about them. She was like, "Do you guys not have any empathy?" And that was where they went, and that's how overstepping occurs because most people, there's not all of them, but most people have some empathy about being able to look at this situation and
right,
seeing how horrific it is,
right,
and they couldn't do that. They had to switch the conversation from talking about Renee Good and who she was
right.
and why this was so horrible to changing the conversation to, "Oh, by the way, let's stop her because she used the F-bomb."
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a technique to push people to look the other way. And yeah, she's amazing, Jasmine. And I think when you use the words, when you use those strong words at them, it's just amazing to watch people in some ways, because they have nothing to say, to sort of, in a way, crumble because they have no argument for this, right? And I know that the media is also complicit in this too, because I noticed that when they were talking to the mayor, all they cared about was the bad word he said. And he's like, let's look at the thing. I said, fuck, they murdered a woman. Well, what do you want to do here? What are you worried about? This word, this word doesn't hurt. Sticks and stones, fake bones. What words will never hurt me, or the murder of this woman, right? So, and so what I do also think, I don't know if everybody in the room, if they're watching also the media, we do see some really changes with some truth telling in the media, that finally they're calling this out, and that can be helpful. I don't know what you're seeing on the ground, or if you want to talk about like truth telling, why it's so important.
Yeah, it is so important. That's why we're having this conversation, because I think it's really important for all of us to be able to take nuggets and bits and pieces and go
Right.
back and have conversations with our family and our friends and our acquaintances. And when someone brings something up to us, we're able to figure out what pieces we can use to put together a narrative, a story, to talk to people about. You know, we always assume that everybody knows what we know,
Hmm.
but they don't.
But they
And I
don't.
think that's a really big lesson for us is that they don't know what we know. They're not listening to what we're listening to. So we have to be the messengers. I'm going to just digress for a minute and
Mhm.
say I was talking. This was last week, and I think we said this. That someone said messaging isn't going to save us. No, but it is part of saving us because we have to change minds and hearts. And you change hearts and minds through storytelling. You change hearts and mind by being able to talk to people about what's happening. You also change hearts and minds by having courage when it's necessary. And I think that gets back to Jasmine Crockett. It gets back to Mayor Fry in being able to show that you have power and confidence and courage, and you can show that indignation when you need to. And I think that's really important in this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one thing I picked up today when we talk about what everybody seems to be bracing for and understanding of is the seriousness of the moment. And even, gathering in these groups felt really good and powerful, like we talked about today. And we also talked about like Malcolm Nance and other people telling us why visibility is so important, why this is the time to really go hard. Because one is history tells us this is important. We talk about why it's important to look back into history, try to look around to say, okay, what did people do then? I know we always talk about this, but you know, I think people understand that it's going to get uh, worse. We already, what we see this administration doing, the Trump administration, it's been reported, is trying to cover up the death and murder of Renee Good. They're trying to spin their little spin tails around it by calling her domestic terrorist, by saying everything you could imagine, they're lying, just like on January 6th. So we know where they're going to lie, right? So it's very important that then the truth, even when we talked about the truth today, the truth even becomes more important because they think they always are going to flooding the zone with their narrative so they can sort of twist this story. And you'll start to see it when you talk to people and they're like, oh, well, she was doing this and she was doing that. And for me, I want to remind people the best, I think, technique when you're talking to people, not with each other, but when you're talking to people that we need to bring along and break the gaze of MAGA, is that just bring them a step before. Bring them steps before. Like, why were these officers on the street? If you want to ask a question about who, like what was she doing there? Let's talk about why ICE is on the streets in a neighborhood. Why is ICE tackling students at a nearby school? Like, why is the president sending and spending this money where on doing these illegal action? Why are these people with masks. Would you want a mask agent opening your door? You're gonna tell me you're not gonna to drive away if somebody's attacking you in your own damn house? If I recall, Fennell, didn't we fight some war about that? What was that war called when the British, we didn't want them coming in our houses, remember? The illegal search and seizure. Anybody remember that? Hello, America. Did you read anything?
So
And what you said, no, people are dummies.
so listen to this. So this is
Yeah.
what I think is important.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation one day, and I found this ticket, and it was a speeding ticket, you
Uh-oh.
know.
You going
Yeah, and
117?
no, I wasn't. Shame on you. I said to Sam, I said, "You got a ticket and you didn't tell me." And he said, "No, that's your ticket." So my point is that they
Oh,
mailed it to me. They mailed it to me.
oh, I see. You
Okay.
had
And so Sam and I had this conversation today that all they had to do, they were there with the car. They
yeah.
had the license, they had all the information. All they had to do was follow her home, or
Mhm.
there was so many other things that they could have done. So you can take my picture and you can send me my speeding ticket. You can do all of that
Yeah.
and without doing anything.
Mhm.
And yet you're going to be there the way that we saw this unfold, and you're going to shoot someone in the face.
Well, I think what they're telling us now is they can shoot people, and I think that's what we have to digest, and it's hard. That's the hard part because truthfully, people don't wanna face reality of what's happening, and when that gentleman well, not that's a bad word for him, that thug shot her, um, every intention was to shoot her, and he called her an effing bitch after he did it. And when we want to talk about misogyny in this time, there's been a lot of writing about misogyny going around with how MAGA treats women. And we've seen this with the administration, especially women of color. There's a lot of ways they degrade people. And so this is really wrapped up in power and control. So we're rational people and we come up with how they should have done it. Police I saw the police chief of Philadelphia come out to say, "Hey, man, you're not coming in." I think it was Philadelphia. "You're not coming into our town." She was the chief of police, and she was saying they're not police. Police aren't trained. Police are trained differently. You don't stand in front of a car. These are untrained people. And she's like, we will arrest you if you come into our town. You're not going and running away. We're going to arrest you. And I'd like to see more people law enforcement people calling out these aren't law enforcement. They're giving police a bad name, right? We know that still police have killed people. We know that that's happened. But when there's accountability, there's no accountability. There's only immunity right now. So, and what they've responded with was 100 more. So they're doubling down. They're not listening to you and say, we should really have done this better. Like they're not listening to rationality. They're like, guess what? We're sending more people.
Yeah.
So they amped it up. So they raised the ante.
Which should also it should also make people pay attention everywhere.
Mhm.
I do think that raising the ante is another overstep.
Yes,
It's another
yes,
overstep.
yes.
And so I believe that this is another overstep, and people will have an opportunity to respond to what we're seeing. I believe, as you said earlier, people out protesting today all over the country
Mhm.
will matter. But Catherine, I think what matters more than anything is for our folks who are in the military
Yes,
or veterans. I think it's important for police officers, ex-police officers, to really speak up about this. Sometimes it's the voice that matters, but it's who the voice is coming from.
right,
So I think an opportunity for big voices to come from those places will matter to people who respect. And it's also important to get this story out. Again, they use all kinds of ways to share information with people, and this is our opportunity to share this information. Everybody should post this, post the video, let
everything.
people and
Mhm.
tell them, look at this for yourself. I mean, they've posted their own video, which doesn't help anything.
Yeah,
So to tell people to look at your own eyes. Do not have lion eyes. Look at
right,
this with your own eyes and
right.
see what you believe happened here and why it happened. I do also believe that they will try to say that because she was part of the LGBTQ community,
Yeah,
that they'll use that as another reason to other her to say that this is why she doesn't matter.
Yes.
And I think that that will also be an overstep. And so there are many opportunities here for us to just make sure that we're talking about the right things
Yes.
here and that we're uh, escalating and elevating this conversation and not running away from it.
No. No, because what also they're doing is limiting congressional visits. I don't know if
Yeah.
people heard that. I know Laura Mack's listening. I see some other folks on here. I'm curious what people are saying, but already again, so it doesn't surprise me at all that they would respond this way. These people are sociopaths. Who's in charge? Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, dog killer. Um, Rubio is creepy Rubio. I never, the guy, it's amazing what happens when this kind of power gets out of control. When you thought people voted for Rubio, remember when they said, well, at least there's one rational person. And now you think to yourself, like, people are living out their fantasies to take over Cuba or vengeance. So when we were talking about Explicit, he's on Substack. We love to read Explicit. If you're not reading Explicit, you should read him. He and Heather Cox do a really great job of bringing us back to history. But Explicit tells the story like no one ever heard because it's just almost like a murder mystery. But he really is able to bring it to life that once we've been here before, right? And how we and that we can't be comforted by certain things when we think, okay, if this happens and then maybe they're going to make some kind of vote or something about it. I mean, we're just in a really dangerous place right now. Iran is out of control too. They're protesting. We're going to strike them. This administration don't want to talk about the Epstein files, right, folks? They want they don't want to talk about that. And they're going to go, they're going to go and probably invade Cuba next. So we have to hold our pants on a little bit here and get our head straight about what we can do. So in this moment, when you think about how much is coming at us, beside talking to people and all that, and when we think long term about power or what history teaches you or what you're hearing in your own heart.
So here's what I think. I wrote a piece this week
Yes, you
when I
did.
was
Let's talk.
yeah, which I was really upset. It's called Pistivity, and it's like when you're beyond pissed is what it's
You were
called.
beyond pissed. It was a good
Yeah,
art.
beyond pissed. But what I think has to happen here, and everybody keeps on saying, that the government isn't going to save us. We're going to have to save ourselves, and we will. But the government is going to help. But part of it is that Republicans have been playing a long game for a long time, but that doesn't mean we can't catch up. And it doesn't mean that we can't do what we need to do in order to
Right.
win. What I'm trying to say in the way that I don't sound like a crazy person is that we have to fight fire with fire. And the way that we've always played the game, and I'm going to read here what Explicit says. He says Republicans understand this even when their strategy is ugly. They talk like football coaches. They exploit weakness. They
Mhm.
play for field position. Democrats keep playing like the goal is to look calm on camera while the other team is sprinting toward the end zone with a knife in its teeth.
That was such a good line. When I say to you folks, read Explicit, I could see that. Yeah, running with the teeth, gun, knife.
Yeah, and so the point that I'm trying to make is that we're going to have to think really differently about
Mhm.
this fight that we're in. And we are going to have to probably do and say some things that we might have been uncomfortable
Doing
saying in the past. But these guys are not playing nice. It is the same thing where we're talking about redistricting. And
right.
I loved what Nadine said on Friday when we're trying to talk about why this is so important for Virginia and for anybody else. If Maryland does it, we always say, well, we don't want to go too far.
Yeah,
We,
don't
we don't want to go too far. And if you just think about that, when we had an opportunity, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, we could have had voting fixed, but
Mhm.
they wouldn't let us fix it. And
Nope.
so there were things that got in our way. So we have to fix that now. And we fix that now by playing big and bold with winning the House and not thinking about 53 Senate seats, figure out how we get to 60 and scare the pants off of them, be bold and loud, and just show them Democrats that they've never seen before. We have to start gnashing our teeth just like they do. And I think that's just going to be really important.
I think what I loved about that article too was the football analogy, because I never thought about football that way, as a game of deception. And a game of deception, we were talking about it, was like when people fake to go left, but they want to go right. It's making the team actually help you win by deceiving them. So you're bringing them, they're actually doing the work for you to make sure that the game turns out the way you want it. And that's how Republicans have been playing. And and not again, when we're talking about this about Democrats and Republicans, I am not trying to pick on Democrats or something like that. I just think that because we are people that play fair. We believe in these norms. And we have what we're finding, though, people are taking advantage of this kind of politeness we've had. We've relied on norms because really America is held together by a little safety pin of norms. We've agreed that we are born in this country, or we become a citizen. We follow this Constitution. We have an allegiance to the United States of America only because we've agreed with this pact that it's not like we're born and we come out saying this stuff, but it's really what's understood. It's understood that when you have an election, you abide by the rules. And what they have been doing is looking about how they can get around every single obstacle and fake this way. And we go with them and we help them get to the touchdown because we are just really facilitating. They know how to goad us in and they think we're going to react. And that's why I liked what Virginia did, what Dan Helmer and Don Scott decided they'd take a bold move. They faked out. They did the fake. And we don't do the fake.
Yeah, they did the fake,
They're
and now
crying. They're all crying. They were like, "Oh,
they
you faked me out."
they did the fake because we needed to do it, and
That's
I
how
and
we
I
want
think
to play.
yes, and I want to say just one thing about all of this because it doesn't matter just for us in Virginia. It
Right,
matters for the country because if we
right.
don't win seats, then the country fails. So that's why this is so important. And so what I would say is that there are some times in history when you have to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do to make things right. And the question that you'd have to ask is the Republicans have already shown us what they do with whatever uh, power the people give to them. So the question is, do you trust them? And then what we have to prove is that we are trustworthy and that given this power, we're going to fix some of those norms, fix those things that need to be fixed to protect us. Because when we have the ball, we have to run with it, not give the ball back to them so that they can do this vengeance tour that they're on. So there's work to be done, and I will never talk, in a way about our Democratic Party because I am a Democrat and
That's
I know
good.
who I am, who
Right.
we all are. But we have to do this thing in order to preserve what democracy we do have.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's gonna be a slog for sure, and one thing people said today, and I think that's the exhausting part, is, "Oh my god, we have 3 more years of it," and when you look at it that way, it is overwhelming, so I would suggest that folks, we don't think of it that way, because what we really don't know is day to day and week to week, we see how much things changes. A lot of people, it was cracking me up, I know we have a minute here, but a lot of people are like, "Well, he's gonna die. He's dying. Look at him. He's dying." I go, "Girl, he's building himself a mausoleum. You think that East Wing is supposed to be some kind of ballroom? No, I think that's where he thinks he's going to build this Trump thing and he's going to put himself in some marble box. That guy, I'm just going to just call it right now. And you can bet on it that that's it. That's what he wants to build down there. So, we're just going to have to do what kind of things we can do to kind of to slow down the skids a little bit, throw some junk,
Yeah,
you know?
but here's what I would say, there are cracks.
Yeah, they're
There are
correct.
cracks.
Talk about that.
17 Republicans voted to bring the bill for the
Right?
Affordable Care Act. So there are cracks, and those cracks are happening because of people who are listening in today, because they are talking to their friends and family and folks, and those folks are talking and sending letters to their Republican Congress people and Senate people to say, we're not happy. The polling that we can trust is telling us.
Yeah.
So I think this is again why this becomes so important. Those folks who have stories to tell about their family and friends, we have to do both things. There's never one way to do things. There is the part where you bring joy, which is what we try to do every Friday, is to bring a
Right,
little bit of joy and pleasure to get through this slog. But then there are these places where you have to be indignant, where you have to be righteous in what you believe, and you
yeah,
have to
do it.
sit with your family and friends and people on the other side of the aisle
Right,
and give them the business about what they are doing. And I mean, talk about it. And we get to, like, just think about it. We've had children murdered
right.
and they haven't done anything,
Nothing.
nothing.
No.
But I think that
Mhm.
these moments are
Yeah,
calling for an Emmett Till moment where we have to really visually bring things to people and let them see what this country is turning into, what they're allowing this administration to turn this country into, and people will have to choose and pick a side.
yeah, and I think it's happening with this is the biggest crack, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show, and Heather Cox talked about this with in time Kent State, the shooting at Kent State, that really changed people's minds about this kind of force, and when people realize it could be really much closer than they believe, they do start to wake up. I am seeing people get super activated that we're not paying attention, so that's all the good news. I wanna end on to kind of wrap us to where we're going to go is the boycotts, and we talked about history. We're going to cover that on the power lunch, and we'll cover it together maybe in some of our conversations, how powerful that is. I want to tell people that the cracks with Spotify, they have removed ICE ads, right? That's great. Avelo, the airlines that was transporting kidnapped humans, they stopped doing that, and that was a process that you all did. So we are making progress, and I know Indivisible is going to do a next really big boycott on February 6th of a certain bank. So I think we start to follow the money. We start to make sure that when we use our power of the purse, we use it effectively, and we really are persistent. And this Friday, I want to remind people that are listening because the General Assembly kicks off. I hope you join us on Wednesday. We'll be down the General Assembly, Stair and Fennell and Robin and the whole team. They'll be down there early, passing out stuff to all the delegates and senators. Wednesday at 3 p.m. down at the General Assembly. Come join us for a reception. Make sure you sign up, and that's on the Substack. I think we have that Eventbrite somewhere. And then we have our press conference this Friday on the Friday Power Lunch, and Louisa Borowski, the whole team of the Grassroots Coalition are going to be presenting their priorities. It's going to be awesome. Robin and Carrie Short will be running that show on Friday. And then next week, we're going to have Simon Rosenberg with us on January 23rd. And some other guests we're lining up. I don't know if we have anybody
Yeah.
confirmed with you, but I want to have Simon in. He's excited about the Women's Summit March down June 26, 27, 28. He's already in for January 23rd in the Women's Summit. So we're already making our own traction. So good for us. So that was a lot, but I want to make sure everybody in the room, since I got your attention, on the 16th, the press conference. The following week on the 23rd, Simon will be back because he'll have some really great info for us. And we may have, do you want to even say it? No, we'll hold that secret. Don't, yeah, okay. Okay, you're on with the Armchair Pundits, Catherine White, and
Nell Norton?
yeah, there you are. And we will be back every Sunday at 7 p.m. unless we, are watching some replays of some good show. Who knows? But we really appreciate you showing up, and we'll see you obviously at the reception or the Friday Power Lunch on Friday. Good night, everybody. Keep
Good night, everybody. Thank you for
doing it.
joining us.
Sisters and brothers. Bye.